Sunshine Valley Estates was not just a neighborhood. It was a statement, a declaration that you had made it in life. The entry gates gleamed with polished brass fixtures, while security guards in pressed uniforms nodded respectfully as residents passed through. I had purchased my home here 3 years ago after my software company was acquired by a tech giant. The price tag had been eye-watering, but the amenities justified every dollar: tennis courts, community pools, hiking trails, and landscaping that looked like it belonged in a luxury resort. Our HOA fees were astronomical, but they maintained the pristine appearance that attracted wealthy professionals like myself. Every blade of grass was precisely the same height. Every mailbox matched perfectly with its neighbors. The rules were strict and numerous, contained in a binder so thick it could stop a bullet. No unauthorized paint colors. No visible trash cans. No parking on the street overnight. No excessive water usage during drought seasons. The penalties for violations were swift and expensive. My personal indulgence after moving in was constructing a custom car wash bay adjacent to my driveway. I had always been passionate about cars, and the thought of being able to wash my vehicles with specialized equipment at home was irresistible. The process to get approval had been grueling: engineering plans, environmental impact reports, water reclamation systems, special drainage permits. It had taken 9 months and over $20,000 in fees and construction, but the result was magnificent. Specialized nozzles, filtration systems, and pressure washers that could make any vehicle shine like new without damaging the finish. I first encountered Karen Whitfield at the mandatory quarterly HOA meeting during my second year in the community. She sat at the center of the board table, a woman in her 50s with expertly highlighted blonde hair cut in an asymmetrical bob that screamed, "I want to speak to your manager." Her posture was rigid, her smile never quite reaching her eyes as she called the meeting to order. "Before we begin, I want to address the string of violations we have been seeing," she announced, flipping through a folder with red-flagged photos. "The Patterson family has installed unapproved solar lights along their walkway. The Jacksons have failed to remove their basketball hoop despite 3 written warnings. And Mr. Chen continues to park his work van in his driveway overnight despite clear rules against commercial vehicles." I watched the faces of my neighbors as they were publicly shamed. Mrs. Patterson was a widow with arthritis who needed the lights for safety. The Jacksons had a teenage son who earned a basketball scholarship. Mr. Chen was a plumber who was often called for emergencies. Yet Karen showed no mercy, announcing increased fines for each offense. "Rules exist for a reason," she continued, scanning the room with cold eyes. "Without them, property values decline. Without them, we become just another ordinary neighborhood, and that is unacceptable." After the meeting, I watched Karen walk to her car, a gleaming white Porsche 911 Carrera S that probably cost more than most people's homes. She spent several minutes inspecting it for any dust that might have settled during the hour-long meeting before carefully driving away. I later learned from neighbors that she had the vehicle professionally detailed weekly and would throw fits if anyone parked too close to her precious car in any parking lot. The irony was not lost on me that Karen herself had several violations on her own property: a water fountain that exceeded height restrictions, landscape lighting that stayed on past the mandated hours, and a flagpole that was 2 feet taller than regulations permitted. Yet no one dared report her. Her position as HOA president gave her immunity that others could only dream of. Little did I know that her sense of entitlement extended far beyond bending rules. It included helping herself to other people's property as well. I rarely left work early, but a migraine had been building all morning, making it impossible to focus on computer screens. My temples throbbed as I pulled into my neighborhood around 2 in the afternoon, looking forward to drawing the blinds and lying down in the dark. As I turned onto my street, something immediately seemed wrong. There was an unfamiliar vehicle in my driveway. No, not in my driveway, but positioned in my car wash bay. A white Porsche 911. I slowed my car to a crawl, disbelief turning quickly to anger as I recognized Corinne Whitfield casually using my specialized equipment to wash her luxury vehicle. She wore designer workout clothes and had tied her hair back with a scarf, moving with the confidence of someone who belonged there. She was using my premium microfiber wash mitt, a $200 accessory specifically designed for delicate clear coats, to scrub her wheel wells. My migraine. Forgotten, I parked my car at the curb and walked toward my property. Corinne had her back to me, humming as she worked, completely oblivious to my presence. She had brought her own bucket but was using my water, my space, my equipment, all without permission. The specialized nozzle I used for rinsing was carelessly tossed on the concrete when not in use, risking damage to the precision tip. "Excuse me," I said, my voice remarkably calm despite the fury building inside me. "What do you think you are doing?" Corinne turned, momentarily startled before her face settled into a practiced smile. "Oh, hello. I did not think anyone would be home at this hour. I am just giving my car a quick wash." "In my car wash bay, with my equipment." "Without asking," I replied, each phrase delivered with increasing emphasis. She waved her hand dismissively, water droplets flying from the expensive wash mitt. "The HOA committee inspected your installation last month. Very impressive system you have. Much better than the community car wash area." That inspection was to verify compliance with my approved plans. "It was not an invitation for you to use my private property," I explained, fighting to maintain my composure. "This is not a community amenity. This is my personal property that I paid for, just like your Porsche is yours." Corinne's expression hardened, her eyes narrowing slightly. "As HOA president, I have access rights to inspect all external installations at any time. Besides, you should be flattered. I could have cited you for excessive water usage given how elaborate this system is. Instead, I am simply making occasional use of it." "That is not how this works," I insisted, incredulous at her logic. "This is trespassing and unauthorized use of my property. I would like you to leave immediately." Corinne carefully placed the wash mitt on my supply shelf and turned to face me fully. Her smile remained fixed but had taken on a predatory quality. "Let me explain something. As HOA board president, I review all violation reports. I decide which ones merit investigation. I notice you have several trees that exceed the height restriction by at least 2 feet. Your garage door was left open for more than 30 minutes last Tuesday. And your backyard fence appears to be using an unapproved stain color." My stomach tightened as I realized the implicit threat. She continued, her voice syrupy sweet but laced with venom. "I have found it beneficial for everyone when neighbors help each other out. You have this lovely car wash area that sits empty most of the day. I have a position that involves reviewing violation complaints. Do you understand what I am saying? You are threatening me with violations if I do not let you use my property," I stated flatly. "Threatening? No, just explaining how our community works best through cooperation," she replied, gathering her personal items. "I will be finished in about 20 minutes. You might want to take something for that headache. You look terrible." I stood frozen in place as she returned to washing her car, effectively dismissing me on my own property. The water continued to flow, dripping from her precious Porsche and pooling on my concrete pad, water that I would pay for on my next utility bill. My hands clenched into fists, but I knew confronting her further would only escalate the situation. For now, I retreated into my house, my mind racing with thoughts of what this meant and what I could do about it. From my kitchen window, I watched her meticulously dry every inch of her car with my premium chamois cloths before driving away with a small wave in my direction. I inspected the wash bay afterward and found my equipment scattered carelessly, the specialized nozzle attachment left on the ground where it could be damaged, and my expensive microfiber mitts thrown into a heap rather than properly hung to dry. This was not just an invasion. It was disrespect of the highest order. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day researching security cameras. By afternoon, I had installed a comprehensive system with multiple angles covering my driveway, car wash bay, and the street approaching my house. The cameras were discreet, weatherproof, and connected to my home network for remote viewing and recording. I wanted irrefutable evidence of whatever might happen next. I did not have to wait long. 3 days later, while at work, my phone buzzed with a motion alert from my security system. I opened the app to see Karen's white Porsche pulling into my driveway. She glanced around furtively before retrieving supplies from her trunk and proceeding to make herself at home in my car wash bay. The cameras captured crystal-clear footage as she used my water, my specialized soap, and even my premium drying cloths, all without permission. She spent nearly 2 hours detailing her vehicle, taking particular care with the wheels and undercarriage. This was not a one-time occurring. Over the next 3 weeks, the cameras documented Karen using my car wash bay 7 separate times, always during weekday hours when she assumed I would be at work. She had even started bringing different cleaners and leaving them stored on my supply shelf, as if she had established permanent rights to the space. The entitlement was staggering. During this time, I began tentatively connecting with other neighbors, careful not to reveal my main purpose. Carol Jenkins from 3 doors down invited me in for coffee when I commented on her beautiful flower garden. Once inside, our conversation drifted naturally to the HOA. "You know, Karen cited me last month for having too many potted plants on my front porch," Carol confided, her voice lowered despite being in her own home. "But did you know she takes flowers from the community garden for her dinner parties? I was there when she cut 24 hydrangea blooms that residents paid for through their dues." This opened the floodgates. I heard from the Millers about Karen using their pool when they were on vacation. The Thompsons reported that she had borrowed their expensive outdoor heater for a gathering and returned it with a broken igniter. Dr. Patel mentioned seeing her using the private tennis court during hours it was reserved for other residents. The most revealing conversation came from Doug Henderson, the former HOA treasurer who had resigned in protest last year. Over beers in his garage, where Karen could not possibly overhear, he shared disturbing information. She implemented the water conservation rules during the drought last year, which was reasonable, Doug explained. But then she began imposing excessive fines on families who used more than the allocated amount. The Garcias have 5 children. Of course they use more water. She fined them $3,000 in 6 months. "Does she follow the same restrictions?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Doug snorted. "She exempted board members from monitoring, claiming it would be a conflict of interest. Her water usage is probably triple the community average between her pool, fountain, and that car she washes constantly." Armed with this knowledge, I spent a weekend reviewing the HOA bylaws and documentation. The revelations were infuriating. Karen had systematically modified rules to benefit herself while penalizing others. More importantly, I discovered that use of private property by HOA officials was explicitly prohibited without written consent. The bylaws stated clearly, no board member shall access, use, or inspect private property improvements without prior written notification and owner consent, except in cases of emergency or safety hazards visible from common areas. My security cameras continued to document Karen's trespassing. She had established a routine. Tuesday and Friday afternoons were her preferred car washing times. She had grown increasingly comfortable, no longer looking around nervously before entering my property. The footage showed her taking phone calls, drinking coffee, and once even having a friend stop by to chat while she used my facilities. My equipment showed signs of wear from improper use. My water bill had increased by 40%. With each documented incident, my determination grew. This was not just about unauthorized use of my car wash bay. This was about abuse of power, entitlement, and hypocrisy. Someone needed to stand up to Karen, and it appeared that I was the only one with both the evidence and the resolve to do so. The seed of an idea began to form, a plan that would give Karen exactly what she wanted, but with consequences she could never anticipate. My college roommate Mark had built a successful plumbing business specializing in eco-friendly water systems. We had stayed in touch over the years, meeting for beers whenever he was in town for industry conferences. I called him on a Sunday afternoon, careful to keep my tone casual. "Mark, remember that car wash bay I built? I am thinking about upgrading the water system. Could you come take a look when you are free?" 3 days later, Mark was standing in my garage, examining the schematics of my existing setup. The door was closed for privacy as we spread diagrams across my workbench. I had already shown him the security footage of Karen's repeated trespassing, and his initial amusement had turned to indignation on my behalf. "This is outrageous, man. She is basically stealing from you and threatening you to keep quiet about it," he said, shaking his head. "So what kind of upgrade are you thinking about?" I leaned closer, lowering my voice despite being alone. "I want to create a dual water supply system, one that looks completely normal but gives me the ability to switch water sources remotely." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Like a graywater system, those are actually becoming popular for outdoor use, perfectly legal in this state for certain applications." "Exactly, but I want be able to control it from my phone. Normal clean water for when I use it, and alternative water when someone uses it without permission." A slow grin spread across Mark's face as he understood my intention. "Alternative water? You mean like recycled water from your home system? The stuff that looks clear but is full of minerals, soap residue, and other dissolved substances that would leave marks on a vehicle?" "Precisely. Nothing harmful or dangerous, just water that would not be ideal for washing a luxury vehicle, especially one with a white paint job that would show every water spot." Mark tapped his pencil against the diagrams. "Technically, this is doable. We would need a holding tank for the recycled water, an electronic switching valve controlled by your home automation system, and a way to conceal the entire setup so it is not obvious there are two different water sources." Over the next few hours, we refined the plan. Mark sketched a design that would place a holding tank behind my garden shed, concealed by strategic landscaping. The tank would collect water from my shower, washing machine, and sinks, all filtered to remove particulates but retaining the dissolved minerals that would leave residue on surfaces when dried. An electronic valve controlled by my smartphone would determine which water source fed the car wash bay. "The beauty of this setup," Mark explained, "is that both water sources will look identical coming out of the hose. Clear, odorless, seemingly normal water. But the recycled water will have significantly higher mineral content, especially calcium and magnesium. When it dries, especially in direct sunlight, it will leave distinct water spots and a filmy residue that is nearly impossible to remove without professional detailing. We compiled a list of necessary components, and Mark offered to source them through his wholesale suppliers to avoid suspicion. The total cost would be significant, nearly $5,000, but the potential satisfaction made it worth every penny. Mark promised to return the following weekend with the materials and help with installation. While waiting for the parts to arrive, I continued documenting Karen's trespassing. Her use of my car wash bay had become even more frequent as summer approached. The cameras captured her increasing boldness. She had started bringing music to listen to and had even invited another friend to wash her BMW using my facilities. My security system dutifully recorded every incident, building a damning collection of evidence. I also installed additional cameras focused specifically on areas where the new water system would be installed, ensuring I would capture Karen's reaction when the inevitable occurred. These cameras were higher resolution with enhanced microphones to document both visual and audio evidence of the aftermath. The parts arrived discreetly over the next week, delivered to Mark's warehouse, and then transferred to my garage in his unmarked service van. I took a vacation day to help unload and organize everything, studying the diagrams and familiarizing myself with each component. The anticipation was building, a mix of nervous energy and righteous indignation fueling my determination. What Karen did not realize was that every unauthorized use of my property was being meticulously documented, time-stamped, and stored in secure cloud storage. Every drop of water she used, every piece of equipment she mishandled, every minute she trespassed was evidence against her. And soon, very soon, her precious Porsche would become evidence as well, evidence that actions have consequences, even for those who believe they are above the rules. The installation began at 11 at night, timed to coincide with the neighborhood's quiet hours when most residents were asleep. Mark arrived with his most trusted assistant, both dressed in plain clothes rather than their company uniforms. We worked under the soft glow of construction lights positioned to minimize visibility from the street. "We need to cut into the main water line here," Mark instructed, pointing to a section of pipe beneath the concrete pad. "Once we insert the diverter valve, we will run the secondary line behind your retaining wall to the holding tank behind the shed." The night air was cool as we worked, the sound of metal tools against pipe seeming unnaturally loud in the silence. Mark's expertise was evident as he made precision cuts and connections, creating a system that would be invisible to casual observation. By 3 in the morning, the basic plumbing was complete, 2 separate water lines converging at an electronic valve that could be switched remotely. "Now for the control system," Mark said, connecting a small weatherproof box to the valve. "This Wi-Fi receiver connects to your home network. The app I am installing on your phone will let you switch between water sources with a single tap. Input A is your regular clean water. Input B is THE recycled water from the holding tank." I tested the app, watching as the valve quietly rotated between positions. There was no visible difference, no sound, no indication that anything had changed except for a small status light on the control box that would be concealed within a fake rock. "The recycled water tank has enough capacity for a full car wash," Mark explained. "It will automatically refill from your household graywater system. The water looks identical, but trust me, the mineral content will make a huge difference once it dries on a vehicle surface." By sunrise, all visible traces of our work had been concealed. The concrete was patched where we had cut in, the control box hidden, and the secondary tank disguised as part of the landscape. Mark ran final tests, confirming that both water sources functioned perfectly and that the switch mechanism responded reliably to the app commands. Remember, Mark cautioned before leaving, the recycled water is not harmful, it just has high mineral content. Perfectly legal greywater system for outdoor use. Nothing that could cause any health issues or environmental concerns. I nodded, understanding the importance of staying within legal boundaries while executing my plan. This is just about teaching a lesson about using other people's property without permission. The next step was to connect the system to my security cameras, creating an integrated solution that would alert me when motion was detected in the car wash area. When triggered, the app would automatically send a notification to my phone, allowing me to switch water sources immediately if needed. For the next 3 days, I left the system on regular clean water, using it normally to wash my own car and ensure everything worked properly. The water flowed clear and clean, leaving my vehicle spotless after drying. The system performed flawlessly. I also tested the recycled water on a small section of my driveway, confirming that once dried, it left a noticeable residue of mineral deposits, exactly as intended. Then I waited for Karen's next unauthorized visit. The alert came the following Friday at 1:42 p.m. My phone vibrated during a meeting with clients, displaying a thumbnail image of a white Porsche pulling into my driveway. I excused myself, stepping into the hallway and opening the security app to confirm it was indeed Karen making herself at home in my car wash bay. She had brought a collection of expensive car care products, arranging them meticulously on my supply shelf. With a quick tap on my phone screen, I switched the water source from input A to input B. The valve rotated silently hundreds of feet away, now drawing water from the recycled greywater tank instead of the clean municipal supply. On my phone screen, I could see Karen begin her washing routine, completely unaware that the water now flowing through the hose contained high levels of calcium, magnesium, and other minerals that would leave unmistakable marks once dried. I returned to my meeting, occasionally glancing at my phone to monitor her progress. The camera captured Karen meticulously washing her prized Porsche, applying what she believed was clean water with careful attention to every surface. She spent nearly 2 hours on the task, using my premium washing products and equipment. The entire time, mineral-rich recycled water flowed freely over the white paint, seeping into every crevice and joint. What made the situation particularly satisfying was knowing that she would not see the results immediately. The water would appear to dry normally at first. Only after complete evaporation would the mineral deposits become visible, tiny white spots covering the entire surface, impossible to remove with simple wiping. By then, the minerals would have already begun their work, potentially etching into the clear coat of her precious vehicle. I watched as Karen finished her unauthorized detailing session, admiring her work from various angles before carefully driving away. She had no idea that she had just subjected her prized possession to exactly the treatment it should never receive. The trap had been perfectly executed, with Karen as the unwitting participant in her own comeuppance. That evening, I switched the water source back to regular clean water. The evidence of my modification was completely hidden, the system looking exactly as it had before. All that remained was to wait for the inevitable fallout when Karen discovered what had happened to her precious Porsche. The security cameras remained vigilant, ready to document her reaction when the realization hit. The morning after Karen's car wash, I deliberately took my time leaving home, curious whether I might witness her discovery firsthand. My patience was rewarded at approximately 9:30 a.m. when a piercing cry from down the street caught my attention. I casually stepped outside to retrieve my mail, positioning myself with a clear view of Karen's driveway 3 houses away. There she stood, frozen in what appeared to be absolute horror, staring at her once immaculate Porsche. Even from a distance, I could see what had happened. The white paint was now covered in thousands of tiny mineral spots that caught the morning sunlight, giving the vehicle a diseased appearance. Karen's hand was over her mouth, her other hand reaching out to touch the surface in disbelief. My security cameras captured her frantic attempts to remedy the situation. First, she tried simply wiping the spots with a cloth, which had no effect. Then she disappeared into her garage, returning with an arsenal of car care products. She sprayed, scrubbed, and polished frantically, her movements becoming increasingly agitated as nothing removed the stubborn mineral deposits. Each attempt seemed to make matters worse, spreading the minerals rather than removing them. I went about my day, occasionally checking the security footage. By afternoon, Karen had called a mobile detailing service, which arrived with professional equipment. I watched with interest as even their specialized products and techniques failed to fully remove the damage. The technician appeared to be explaining something to Karen, who became visibly upset, gesturing wildly at her car and shaking her head in denial. The confrontation I had been expecting arrived the following morning. I was enjoying coffee on my front porch when Karen's Porsche pulled into my driveway at high speed, braking sharply. She emerged from the vehicle like a storm, slamming the door and marching toward me with undisguised fury. "You," she shouted, pointing an accusatory finger. "You did something to your water system. You deliberately sabotaged my car." I remained seated, maintaining a puzzled expression. "Good morning, Karen. What are you talking about?" "Do not play innocent with me," she hissed, moving closer. "I washed my car here on Friday, and now it is covered in water spots that will not come off. The detailer says the minerals have etched into the clear coat. Do you know how much it costs to repaint a Porsche?" I sipped my coffee calmly. "I am not sure why you were washing your car at my house on Friday. I certainly do not recall giving you permission to use my car wash bay or my water." Karen's face flushed crimson. "That is not the point. Your water system damaged my car. The detailer estimates $8,000 to correct the damage. I expect you to pay for it immediately, or I will sue you for damages." I set my coffee down slowly, standing to face her directly. "Let me understand this correctly. You are admitting to repeatedly using my private property without permission, and now you want me to pay for damages that occurred during your unauthorized use." "The water was contaminated," she insisted, her voice rising. "You must have known it would damage vehicles. This is deliberate sabotage." "I recently installed an eco-friendly greywater recycling system for outdoor use," I replied truthfully. "It is fully compliant with state regulations and properly permitted. The system reduces waste by recycling household water for non-potable uses. There are signs clearly posted that the water is non-potable recycled water." I gestured to a small sign I had installed the previous evening that read, "Caution, recycled water, not for drinking or vehicle washing." Karen's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "That sign was not there on Friday." "Are you certain?" I asked innocently. "Because I have security camera footage of my property from the past several weeks. Would you like me to review it together? We could confirm when the sign was installed, and while we are watching, we could also document all instances of unauthorized access to my property." At the mention of security cameras, Karen's expression changed dramatically. The color drained from her face as she realized the implications. "You have cameras?" "Of course. Most homes in our neighborhood do these days," I replied casually. "Mine capture crystal clear footage with timestamps. They have documented several instances of trespassing on my property in recent weeks. Would you like me to share that footage with the police, or perhaps with the HOA board?" Karen took an involuntary step backward, her righteous indignation deflating visibly. "You cannot prove that I knew about your recycled water system." "I do not need to prove that," I countered. "What I can prove is repeated unauthorized access to my property, use of my utilities without permission, and manipulation of HOA regulations for personal benefit. The evidence is quite compelling, especially when combined with testimonials from other neighbors who have experienced similar issues with your conduct." Her eyes widened slightly at the mention of other neighbors. She had clearly not anticipated a coordinated response to her behavior. For a moment, she seemed to consider her options, then her expression hardened once more. "This is no. Tea over," she threatened, backing toward her spotted Porsche. "You will regret this. I still run the HOA." "For now," I replied evenly. "But the annual board election is next month, and I have been collecting quite a lot of interesting documentation regarding HOA management practices. I think the community would find it very educational." Karen did not respond, instead climbing into her damaged vehicle and driving away with a spray of gravel. I remained standing on my porch, watching her retreat. The confrontation had gone exactly as anticipated. Karen had revealed her own misconduct while threatening me, all while being recorded by my security system. The pieces were falling into place perfectly. That afternoon, I received notices of 3 alleged HOA violations: excessive water usage, unauthorized modification of approved plans, and improper signage. I had been expecting this retaliation and was fully prepared to contest each violation with documented evidence at the upcoming HOA meeting. Karen's desperate counterattack was playing directly into my strategy, giving me the perfect opportunity to present my case to the entire community at once. The monthly HOA meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday evening at the community center. I arrived early, USB drive in hand containing carefully edited footage of Karen's trespassing, documentation of her selective enforcement of rules, and testimonials from neighbors I had collected over the past weeks. I had also invited several neighbors who had shared their own experiences with Karen's abuses of power, ensuring they would be present to support my claims. Karen arrived precisely on time, dressed in a business suit as if armor for battle. She barely glanced in my direction as she took her place at the center of the board table, calling the meeting to order with practiced authority. The routine business proceeded normally until she reached the agenda item labeled Violation Appeals. "We have received an appeal from the owner of 1428 Oakwood Drive regarding 3 violations issued last week," Karen announced, her voice deliberately neutral. "The owner disputes citations for excessive water usage, unauthorized system modifications, and improper signage." "That would be me," I stated clearly, standing up from my seat. "And I not only dispute these violations, but I would like to present evidence of systematic abuse of power and selective enforcement of HOA regulations." Murmurs rippled through the assembled homeowners as I connected my USB drive to the projection system. Karen attempted to object, citing meeting protocols, but several board members overruled her, curious about my allegations. "Before I present my appeal," I began, "I would like to share some security footage that directly relates to these violations. This is from my property over the past month." The screen displayed crystal-clear footage of Karen repeatedly entering my property, using my car wash bay without permission, and mishandling my equipment. Each clip was time-stamped and dated, showing a clear pattern of trespassing. The room fell silent as the evidence mounted, clip after clip showing Karen making herself at home on my property. Over the past 6 weeks, Karen Whitfield has accessed my private property without permission at least 9 times, I explained calmly. She has used utilities I pay for, equipment I purchased, and has threatened me with violations when I objected to this unauthorized use. Karen attempted to interrupt. This is a personal dispute that has no place at an HOA meeting. The violations were issued because of legitimate infractions. Which brings me to my next point, I continued, undeterred. The HOA bylaws explicitly state that board members cannot access private property improvements without written consent, except in emergencies. I have documentation showing that Karen has systematically violated this provision, not just with my property, but with several others in the community. I played a compilation of testimonials from neighbors, each describing instances where Karen had accessed their property without permission, borrowed their possessions, or exempted herself from rules she strictly enforced on others. The evidence was overwhelming and damning. Furthermore, I added, regarding the water usage violation, I have records showing that Karen has exempted board members from the water conservation requirements she has used to fine other residents. Her own water usage exceeds the community average by 300%, yet she has never received a citation. The room had grown increasingly tense as resident after resident recognized the pattern of behavior being exposed. Several people began nodding in agreement, others whispering among themselves about their own experiences. Carol Jenkins stood up, adding her voice to mine. She took flowers from the community garden for her dinner party, plants we all paid for through our dues. Doug Hend, our son, followed. As former treasurer, I can confirm that board members were exempted from water monitoring, while other residents received excessive fines. One by one, neighbors rose to share their experiences, creating a devastating portrait of abuse of power. Karen's face had gone from confident to concerned to ashen as the testimony mounted against her. When she attempted to defend herself, her explanations sounded hollow and self-serving against the weight of evidence. As for the specific violations against me, I concluded, they were clearly issued in retaliation after Karen damaged her vehicle using recycled water from my legally permitted graywater system during one of her unauthorized visits to my property. The system is fully compliant with state regulations and properly documented with permits that were approved by the county. A board member named Richard, who had always seemed intimidated by Karen, finally spoke up. I move that we dismiss the violations against 1428 Oakwood Drive and conduct a full review of HOA management practices, including an audit of selective enforcement of regulations. I second that motion, another board member quickly added. Karen attempted to regain control of the meeting, but it was too late. The community had seen the evidence, and years of pent-up frustration with her leadership style had found an outlet. The motion passed unanimously, with Karen abstaining in visible discomfort. I further move, Richard continued with newfound confidence, that we hold a special election for the position of HOA president at next month's meeting, given the serious nature of these allegations. This motion also passed decisively, effectively placing Karen's position in immediate jeopardy. The remainder of the meeting was tense but productive, with several residents volunteering to form a committee to review and revise HOA policies to prevent future abuses of power.